goes right, it's a slice. If it goes left, it's a hook. If it goes straight, it's a miracle. This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
Welcome to another episode of the Out of Bounds podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. I'm Nate Sharman and always joined by Josh Durso. Josh, we've had such great golf to start this 2023 season, so let's get into it, huh?
It's here. It is here. And it's been a busy couple weeks, interesting couple weeks, I think, in golf because of the new elevated events and things like that in the mix. It's interesting. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we'll get to those elevated events, but, as I was getting ready for this episode this morning, we had the script all ready to go, and I'm looking through the script, and I'm like, wow, we're not going to talk about LIV for one episode. This might be the first episode we never talk about LIV. Oh, never mind. Patrick Reed had other ideas. As of a couple hours ago, today on Tuesday, Patrick Reed has threatened to sue CNN for $450 million. So the story goes is that CNN aired a piece, I believe it was a couple days ago or a week ago, about LIV Golf, basically how they're holding information to give over the PGA Tour, essentially, in a roundabout way. So he's demanding that CNN issues a public apology within 5 days, or he's going to sue for $450 million.
Did I see correctly that Jake Tapper was actually named in this?
Yes, I think Bob Costas was named too.
It is hilarious to me that Patrick Reed and I guess the Reed family just continue to sue any and every media entity and personality they can find because they feel a certain way, it seems, about how he was portrayed many years ago. Like, I realize that this is because of a new piece, but the new piece didn't, hit on anything new. Right. In the grand, there wasn't any breaking Reed news here. This was all old stuff, hashing the same thing out again. This is just becoming one of the more silly storylines in golf. And to say it's a distraction for everybody, in my opinion, if I'm any of the LIV guys, I don't like this either. Right. Because this is distracting from what the LIV conversation could be. Because every time he names a new media conglomerate or names a new media personality in a lawsuit or in a potential lawsuit, all of the focus shifts from LIV to Patrick Reed and Patrick Reed's bizarre personal situation.
Well, to the contrary to that, we know that all press is good press, right? So maybe by Patrick Reed doing this and getting the LIV name out, not a lot of people are talking about LIV right now. They're not playing. And the PGA Tour event, their 2023 elevated event season just kind of started. Maybe that's a way that LIV can kind of get in the news?
I think all press is good press if you're Patrick Reed.
Yes.
All press may not be good press if you're LIV.
Okay.
I think if you're a brand, right, you're trying to curate something right now. You're trying to create something that people can that gains some affinity with fans and maybe starts to carve out its own niche in the golf world. And when you start to have these diversions where the individuals start to stand out or start to detract from it, becomes a little challenging, I think.
Right.
If you're LIV, because if you're the LIV tour, you want the focus to be on your events. You don't want the focus to be on the, like I said, rather bizarre Reed family dynamic, which all of this stuff seems to always come back to the really bizarre dynamic that this family carries with it. Forget the cheating scandals and everything else like that with Patrick Reed on the golf course.
Right.
Forget all of that. Just the Reed family and burner Twitter accounts and all of these other kind of weird anomalous things within the story that is the Reed family. That stuff is just, it's garbage. It's garbage.
It just seems like to me he's, sitting here saying, oh, you said something mean about me on TV. I'm going to sue you for $400 million.
And also, can we also just get this out of the way? The numbers are ridiculous. The numbers that he's put in these lawsuits are insane. I don't remember what the CBS one was, but the last
around the
last
same number,
one,
I think.
But just an absurd amount of money. You cannot. obviously not an attorney here, but you can't possibly claim that you lost $450 million because of a piece that CNN ran.
Right.
That's just, you want to talk about crypto being funny money. Producer Paul Russo loves to say that, but this is funny money. The numbers he describes in the lawsuit is nothing but funny money.
Right.
I mean, it's a joke. It's a complete joke. Play golf. Go win LIV events, and you'll make piles of money.
My favorite part of the whole piece, though, is I was reading through it before we started here, and it says, Reed's representative said, he's quoted by saying, Patrick did not take the blood money. Okay, I mean, he pretty clearly did, right? I mean, it's blood money, right? I mean, it's fair to say.
Sports washing. I mean, that goes back to the original debate about what LIV is or isn't. And I feel like LIV, if they've done anything well over their first season, if you want to call it like their pilot season, I feel like from where we started, they did a pretty good job of distancing themselves from that narrative.
Yep.
The focus was on the golf, or the focus was on the lack of YouTube viewers, or it was on the individuals, or maybe the team element that a lot of people didn't really understand. No, but now we're back to square one, and that is like, that's a really good reason. And I think why, if you're LIV, you're just like, okay, this is not great. We don't want to be back here again. Like, yes, Saudi money is involved in what we do. We are a Saudi-run organization, and that is just it.
Right.
So, I don't know, like, the funny thing, I guess, and maybe you have a different opinion about this, but like, none of these suits are going to go anywhere. We know that, right?
No, the other ones haven't
like
gone anywhere.
They're not going to go anywhere. Nothing is going to happen with any of this stuff. It's literally just, does it feel a bit like a temper tantrum? Like, you don't like coverage, and it's just like, I mean, in Big J journalism, we're going to say like, okay, this is effectively a slap suit, right? Like, but this is not that. This is literally just like a temper tantrum, because it's not stopping anything from happening. It's not stopping any coverage. It's not stopping anything at all. Like,
no one takes a step back in the golf world. Everyone moves on as usual. But credit Patrick Reed, though. Maybe he'll just keep throwing these lawsuits out. Maybe he'll hit one
until he gets a settlement.
That'd be pretty good, wouldn't it?
Basically, just like playing the settlement like lottery.
Right. All right, we gave LIV enough of our time today, right?
Yeah.
Let's go over to our favorite tour. We weren't here last week, so let's talk about the Sentry that came 2 weeks ago. Wild finish. We went into that watching that elevated event, seeing Colin Morikawa having a 6-shot lead into Sunday, and I remember texting you and saying, "Well, there's no drama. There's no drama for this elevated event." Well, until there wasn't, as Colin Morikawa sort of, I would say, faltered on that final round. Jon Rahm fires a minus 10 round to fly into the lead at 27 under and take that first elevated event of the season. Unreal.
Did it feel like, because to me that didn't feel as much like Colin lost it as much like Rahm went out and won it.
Yeah, he went birdie, 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 eagle in one stretch.
Yeah.
But Morikawa did go bogey on the back at one point. And he had a couple of the chipping yips, as we call it, where he had a couple tough ones. So a little bit of both sides of the coin, I think, on that front. When you have a 6-shot lead on Sunday, you probably should convert. And Morikawa's had a history. He faltered at a different event a couple years ago. So I think it's something that's kind of happening for Colin, and hopefully that's something he can get over.
Feels like he's going through a bit of like the Spieth slump that we saw Jordan go through a few years ago, where maybe it doesn't last as long, but where his game is clearly not where it was. I forget what hole it was on, but he basically, I think it might have been within the last 2 or 3 holes of that event. He chunks that little short chip, and it's just like, that's not yips. That's not that is not anything other than just your head in your game not being aligned, right? And it seems like that's where we already know he's an awesome ball striker. Like, when he's on, he's literally one of
the best ball strikers in the world.
Yeah, I mean, one of the top 5 on tour. Forget results, forget wins and losses, or wins, or where he's sitting in world ranking. Like, he is one of the best ball strikers, period.
Right.
So, what else do you have to sort out? Basically, you just have to sort out around the greens and that. But I think a lot of golfers would have fallen watching Jon Rahm just absolutely sprint up the leaderboard.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
he's so intimidating too.
When you watch a guy cover basically 5 or 6 strokes in a span of 6 or 7 holes, I mean, even if you are Tiger Woods in his prime, that's going to catch your attention. That's that's a huge move. What were your thoughts on the first elevated event, format wise?
I think it was good. Hawaii Golf, just as something else I want to talk about too, there wasn't a lot of wind at the Sentry, so we saw really low scores with Rahm 27 under. Yeah. So a lot of guys in that big discrepancy. But talking about elevated events, I guess I'm a guy that likes the big field events. I think watching 140 to 150 guys is a lot of fun, and it seems like to me you get some of those big events, you get a real packed leaderboard, anyone can win. And these small little events, there's only 40 guys, so there's only a couple guys that can win come Sunday. And especially when Colin Morikawa is able to come out to that big lead, you just don't really see those in big events because it's so hard. It's hard to win the golf tournament. It's even harder to have a 6-stroke lead going into Sunday.
Yeah, you're talking about 3.5 times as many participants.
So that's my only thoughts on elevated events. But I thought they did a good job. We talked about last week, 2 weeks ago, about how the last hour would be commercial free. I watched that last hour on the Golf Channel. It was awesome. Yeah. Watching no commercials, it was really, really cool. I thought it was really, really kudos to Callaway for butching up for paying for that last hour on Golf Channel and making it work.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why. All the reaction to it was great on social media. Everybody who watched it seemed to love it. I did not catch it myself, but I was up. We talked about that before that event. It's a no-brainer. Right. Go commercial free. Find a sponsor that's going to pony up and handle that, and take advantage. It's awesome. My one hesitation or concern about these limited field events was just that what you kind of hinted at there is we could see. You have a better chance of a gapped leaderboard or somebody blowing out the field because there's fewer participants. Now, this is like the Sentry obviously was like a super limited field compared to what we'll be seeing out of normal elevated events, which will be around 60, right?
So no, it's still 40. There's only one guy gone. It was Rory. So we'll see you around 40.
It could, it's essentially like the tour has to pick. Do we want our most notable branded guys to be the ones playing week in and week out in these high-profile events? And if it gets a little, if it's a blowout one week or if it's a runaway one week, well, it doesn't really matter because everybody who's on the course is somebody we can put on TV and it'll be entertaining to watch.
Right.
But I think there's some questions. We were exchanging some tweets and messages this past weekend because of the discrepancy in world golf ranking points.
That's a problem.
Between these elevated events and full field events. There really isn't any difference.
Right.
They're essentially like, yes, better field, more competitive if you're talking about just pure talent, but OWGR doesn't really have that factored in.
Right.
It seems to be more of a how many people are playing calculation that's happening. So I don't know if this is going to prompt the tour to go to OWGR and perhaps trying to get them to change the calculus a little bit, which I think could get really complicated with LIV, because if the PGA Tour is able to do that with their elevated events and LIV has to play by the old rules, I think there'd be a really solid argument there for
sure.
LIV to say, well, what the heck?
Right.
But if, on the other hand, if the tour is comfortable with, for example, like we're going to talk about this past weekend, the Sony Open, if people are comfortable, or if they're comfortable with Siwoo Kim getting the same amount of points, or roughly the same amount of points as John Rahm for winning the week prior, then I guess that's okay. Right?
Yeah, I don't agree with them being able to get the same amount. It's just so much harder to win the Sony Open than it is to win the Sentry.
Yeah,
you have 100 more guys you got to play against. That's just so much harder in my opinion.
I also think that, and I don't know, we should probably do a deep dive sometime on the show just in what goes into those points and how those points are derived week in and week out, because there are some courses, we were talking about some of like kind of the cartoonish drives that we saw a couple weekends ago. Mm-hmm. And I think there comes a point where maybe some of these events where you see the field finishing, year after year, not using Hawaii as an example, but, there are some events in the West Coast where, 25, 30 under par, it happens.
Yeah.
Not just out of the blue. It happens on a semi-regular basis. I think those types of events need some kind of change.
It's just hard with those Hawaii events, though, and West Coast events, too, because you can't tell if the wind's going to pick up.
Right.
If the wind picks up and it's hard, tough to get to the double digits,
Right.
with the wind going crazy. We see that at St. Andrews and in the British Open, too. So it's
harder to
predict
win
that. Yeah.
It's harder to win on a course where scoring is low, or I should say where scoring is closer to even par.
Definitely.
Maybe between like -5 and -15, as opposed to being able to win on a. I mean, John Rahm literally won because he was able to go nuclear on a golf course. I'm not saying that was entirely because of the setup of the golf course,
Right.
but setup of the golf course had something to do with it.
Yeah, that was a par 5 they were hitting 7 irons in.
Right. So, I mean, that kind of thing, I think maybe the tour needs to just look at, and maybe absent of OWGR, just look at that and maybe think about how that could be reined in a little bit so that, these courses that they do want to keep going back to year in and year out are still, they aren't kind of run a mockery on.
Right. All right, let's talk about the Sony Open. You alluded to it. Siwoo Kim captured his 4th PGA Tour win in Honolulu. Hayden Buckley started the day with a 2-shot lead. Siwoo was on the 17th, par 3, hits his ball over the green. Here's Hayden Buckley knocking his birdie at 16 to take the lead. Siwoo then turned around, chips in on 17 to get tied for the lead, and then he goes and birdies 18 for the 1-shot lead. Buckley misses a 12-footer on 18 to force a playoff. So Siwoo walks away with his 4th PGA Tour win. So my big question out of this with Siwoo Kim, is this a guy we should be talking about more? He's 27 years old. He's won 4 PGA Tour events. He's played well in international events. He played in the 2022 President's Cup. He went 3-1 in that event. But the only thing Siwoo Kim has against him is he doesn't have a top 10 in a major. So that might be the only spot we don't talk about Siwoo. It's because, we talk about the main golfers on the PGA Tour, and Kim's name is never mentioned. 27-year-old, he's not that old. He's had a good career already, 4 PGA Tour wins, 1 including a Players' Championship. Now, and this win's a pretty good win. I believe he won the Wyndham, which is the event before the playoffs start, so on a relatively high-profile event. So is it time we start talking about Siwoo a little bit more?
I don't really know why and I kind of heard this narrative pop up after he won on Sunday, like he went somewhere. Like people didn't think that he was one of, I don't know, like the 25, 30 best players in the world. He's
not talked about, really.
I guess that just speaks to how competitive professional golf is now. I mean, that somebody like him could fly under the radar.
Right.
But, I mean, I think that, given what he's accomplished at 27 years old, I mean, I don't see a scenario where you couldn't not put him as, I mean, he's top 10 favorite to win any given major, right? At this point?
Maybe not top 10, but in that top echelon. So no top 10s in majors, right? So we talked about last episode that I think Patrick Reed will play well in the Masters.
Yeah.
So that's my first Masters bet of the year. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'll eventually take. Next one's going to be Siwoo top 20. Top 25 in a major this year. I don't know which major I'll pick. Probably the Masters, just because it's the nearest one.
So,
but we'll have to see what the odds. I don't know. I don't think they come out with the top 20, the top however many odds this early. But
yeah.
The next one.
So to your question, should we be talking about Siwoo more? I think probably yes, because as I look at the list of, we're going to talk about odds for this coming weekend. But when I see names like, Will Zalatoris, Cam Young, Sam Burns, Aaron Wise, guys that are, JT Poston, they're basically like top 15 odds this weekend. How can we not also be talking about Siwoo Kim in those conversations? I mean, they're, in some cases, I'm not sure those guys have had as much success as he has had.
Right.
And because he's been around a little longer, he kind of gets shoved down the totem pole a bit. Are we victims of the moment that much?
Right.
Where we literally just can only look at the last.
Yeah, recency bias is a thing.
The last year and not appreciate what he is as a golf. I mean, I would say he wins. So he wins this past weekend. If he continues to play well in the next month, is he not a favorite to win the Masters? How is he not?
Yeah.
Right.
Is he in the field this week? Did you see his name on there?
He is in the name.
He is, okay.
Yes, he is, yeah. And again, middle of the road odds in that 10 to 15 range.
Right.
So he's not he's not a favorite, but at the same time, like there are a lot of guys who have significantly worse odds than him to win.
Fantastic value on Siwoo if you want to go that route.
Right. So I don't know. I don't think going back to back is really hard.
Right.
Unless you're Tony Finau.
Unless you're Tony Finau and you hear Josh talk about you on the podcast.
That'll happen. But no, I think that the Siwoo discussion really is just an example of how competitive professional golf has become. It's clogged. Like it's really clogged. Like we can be talking about a guy like Colin Morikawa in the way we've been talking about him, where we kind of view him now as being in this slump where, like, if he existed in the exact same scenario maybe 15 or 20 years ago, pre-Tiger Woods, maybe 30 years ago, we're saying, like, he's an incredible golfer, one of the best of the generation. It's just like we have really elevated expectations now of these guys.
Yes,
they're not going to win like Tiger won.
Right.
Or like Rory wins, I guess.
Definitely not. So let's talk about this week. The American Express Open, 156 players, $8 million purse. Contains 15 of the top 50 players, which I'll get back to in a little bit. So this tournament's cool. It's played over 3 courses. They play at PGA West, La Quinta, and the Nicklaus Tournament in California. It's a really, really fun tournament where they play 3 days, and there's a Pro-Am going on simultaneously. So the first 3 days, they play each course once, two playing pros and an amateur with them. So it's just really fun to watch. Last year, I remember watching this tournament and liking it, especially because it's in California, too, so it's in sort of that primetime slot for sports. Last year's winner, Hudson Swafford, who is now on the LIV Tour. So we won't be seeing him in the winner's circle this week. Hudson's going to take the week off and get ready for the next LIV event. So let's talk about our favorite time of the show, right? Predictions.
Oh gosh.
And I don't think we did too hot in that first elevated event, either of us. So let's go back and have you figured out who you're going to take this week, or?
Yes.
Siwoo?
Not taking Siwoo. Sam Burns.
That's a pick.
But he's another one of those guys.
What was his odds?
Plus 28.
28. I like it.
He's another one of those guys where, like, if recency bias is the thing, we haven't really seen a lot out of him since the middle of last year.
Right, middle last year he was awesome.
I mean, like, so we don't know. Like, is that going to kick back in? I'm kind of basing it off of that. Like, I feel like as we approach the February timeline, that's when he starts to get warm. This is also when Scotty Scheffler started going absolutely nuclear last year.
Masters. Yeah.
So I'm sticking with Sam Burns. Sticking with it.
I'm going to go with Willie Z.
Oh, man.
So we all know about that back injury. Late last year, they made him pull out of the FedEx Cup playoffs. So he played his first tournament back in competitive action last week. Top 25. So a good start for Will Zalatoris. And last year, during this tournament, at the Nicklaus course he played on Friday, shot 61 and got the course record. So I feel good about Willie Zalatoris this week for those 2 reasons.
Even with that putting stroke. Lots of ways you can get it done on the tour.
And I wish we could do an AM prediction. I was looking last night, and they didn't release the names of the AMs yet. And I think it's a little bit more high profile in about a month when they play at Pebble.
Yep.
That's usually the one where you get like Boomer there. Josh Allen was there last year. Hopefully he's not. Hopefully he's at the Super Bowl this year.
Tony Romo.
Right?
House.
Yep. Guys like Jeremy Roenick. You see those guys play in that event. So that one's a lot of fun too. But pro-ams are always fun.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Who's your dark horse this weekend? You've got your favorite. I would say Willie Z is a pretty good favorite. But if you're looking at a guy who maybe has been flying under the radar,
Tom Hoagie.
Oh, that's
He's been playing well.
That's interesting.
Yep.
That's an interesting pick.
That's my. You have an under the radar?
You know what? I feel like Burns kind of is an under the radar pick. But if I'm looking further down the list, especially on the gambling side of things, Ricky Fowler plus 65.
Oh, Bruce Paul like that one too.
Absolutely. I know Paul's got a big old smile on his face right now, but I like it. He's not playing those butter knives anymore. He's got real golf clubs that work for him.
Yep.
And he seems to have shown he's looked pretty good over the last few events that he's played in. Yeah. It is insane to me that for all of the crap that golf Twitter talks about Ricky Fowler, that he's even eligible to play and that he's playing.
Right. He played well at the end of the season last year.
Yeah. It shows you, though, I think that, like, these guys, even as they may not look their best, they're still there. They're still always there.
Plus, he's Ricky Fowler. He changed golf for a little while there in terms of apparel. You had so many people wearing his type of clothing, and that's a good segue to our next conversation about golf wear.
I feel so strongly about this.
So JJ Spawn,
strongly about this
in the elevated event, he came out with the button-down, untucked in Hawaii. Paul's got a picture up on the screen here pretty soon. It's an awesome look. A guy like JJ Spawn too. It's just fun. So I think this kind of started a big debate on golf Twitter that we need to have. What's your thoughts about tucked versus untuck it? We've seen LIV. They've allowed shorts, which has been something the PGA Tour has refused to do for years. What are your thoughts?
Let's get casual, right? Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer to me. I think, this obsession with trying to be formal or trying to be what the tour looked like, a decade or two or three ago is just such a silly, if there's anything that younger millennials and Gen Z has taught us, it's that throw tradition out the window, go with what works. And I think what works for the modern professional golfer, and frankly for the growth of the game moving forward, is a less formal, more relaxed kind of thing. I also like the idea of, it might have been D-Rap who threw it out on Twitter, that maybe different events should, the events themselves, the organizers of these individual tournaments, should have say in what the dress code is for any given event. I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, that is a cool idea.
I mean, where do you come down on the casual versus the not? I mean, obviously I don't think we're going to see the tour allow shorts anytime soon. Right. But
I have an interior dilemma with untucked versus tucked because I agree 100% with all the things you said about growing the game and letting people see pros on TV taking the entire game more casual and just allowing more people out there. But I've always been a person that's always worn the collared shirt on the golf course and tucked it in primarily. So I think that when they're on tour and on television, I think it'd be good to keep it tucked. We see it on other sports. You take a look at basketball. Actually in the NBA, it depends on the refereeing, but there is a rule in the rule book that if you have your shirt untucked, it can be a technical foul. Right. Whether that's called that much is like I said, depends on the refereeing and the crew that's on the game. You don't really ever see that get called. But there is something that's they do have an image on TV to uphold, and so I just worry that you start allowing more and more things, and you could get down a slippery slope. So there, I think I'm in favor of keeping the shirts tucked in and going to the shorts thing. I still think pants should always be. The PGA Tour has always worn pants. Keep that with pants.
Yeah, my hesitation with that is I think at some point then you're going to have to draw the line with what pants look like.
Right.
Because we already see the joggers. Mm-hmm. And if you're one of these people who feels very strongly about pants, I don't understand personally how you can also be in support of joggers, which are just barely pants, right?
Yeah, I just don't think some people want to see other people's legs. I think that's the...
Yeah, I mean, the flip side of it is these are all professional athletes getting paid to, play a sport at an extremely high level. Right. So, we shouldn't see too many, poor legs. Right. Maybe not, though. I don't know.
Everyone loves seeing Phil Mickelson's legs with those calves.
I think...
Talking point.
I think if there's one thing to be gained here is if you opened it up a bit, if you made options available, I think you'd just see more variation. You wouldn't necessarily see all of the guys go to one thing. So, maybe that would, make golf a little more inclusive for folks who maybe feel like it's a little past them or over them because of how formal it can look from the outside, especially if you're only watching tour golf.
Going on the joggers front, though, the only thing I love joggers. I'm a big fan of them, so I'm okay with them wearing them on the tour. The only thing I don't like is the Floods ones. Right. Kind of the European style where they go up to
mid-calf.
Yeah, it's almost right. You almost use a dad joke. What is there, a flood coming? Right. So that's the only thing I don't love those, but I'm okay with them. I'm okay with joggers.
But more importantly, we've got a documentary coming.
Yes. Speaking of D-Rap, Daniel Rappaport of Barstool Golf, he gave us an exclusive look inside of the Full Swing Netflix documentary that's coming out next month, February 15th. That'll drop. Guys like Rory, JT, Spieth, Matthew Fitzpatrick, Dustin Johnson, Scotty Scheffler, Brooks Koepka, Colin Morikawa, Ian Poulter, Joel Damon, just to name a few guys that'll be looked at in that video.
How on earth did Joel Damon get there?
Joel Damon's an awesome personality.
That's the one when I look at the list, I'm like, huh? I guess I may not be I'm maybe not plugged in enough to golf Twitter to understand.
I don't have Max Homa's name down there, but I'm pretty sure he's involved too.
I can't wait for it. Obviously, it's going to be awesome, right? This will probably be the first Netflix thing that I've consumed in, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years.
Right. They did a documentary series like this with Formula One.
Right.
They did Drive to Survive, and that was incredibly popular.
Yeah.
And it has been renewed for more seasons, so I expect Full Swing to kind of follow in the same route.
So the question here is, do you think this helps grow the game in the way that I think the people who are working in it hope that it does?
I think so, yeah. And, you know, as they've talked about, what a year to film a documentary last year, right?
Oh, yeah.
And to
get it's a mixed bag. You've got a mixed bag of guys from both sides on this thing, yeah. It almost feels to me like something that there can't just be one season of, because there's going to be so much that's unresolved at the end of the season because of where the whole like LIV PGA battle is. I mean, I almost don't see how a season 2 can't happen. Like, it has to happen.
The whole LIV PGA thing we've talked so much about is built for television, right? I mean, you have LIV battling PGA, and then you have Patrick Reed battling media conglomerates like Shane Bacon, Brandel Chambly, now CNN. You know, so you have it. I think it's made for TV. If you ever were to have a Hollywood TV series, you're going to use this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is the most. This is probably the story, the golf story, that's most easily consumed by non-golfers.
Yes, that too.
So, and also, you know, I think for those of us who consume a lot of golf content throughout the week, the month, the season, I think we know the story because we saw it play out in real time, but nobody has really seen, and I would say like golf media included, nobody's really seen like a full breakdown of the whole thing.
Right.
Like the whole thing will be all encompassed in this, unless the producers just decide to go another way with it. But this will be the first example of like from start to present day, or end of the last season, where that whole thing went. I mean, that'll be cool. That's going to be unique.
We're going to learn a lot about some of the behind-the-scenes work.
Yeah, are you expecting to see, I know in a couple promo videos I saw you can see players like throwing stuff and getting rowdy in the locker room because they're obviously upset or something along those lines. Are you expecting to see a lot of that?
Probably not.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
You know, they like to highlight those in the promo videos, but I don't think you'll see too much unorderly contact. Yeah,
it's like, you know, they're going to have to focus on something. Season 2, if you want to talk about season 2, here it is.
Before season 1 even comes out?
Before season 1 even comes out, season 2 will have to focus on something other than the LIV drama, obviously. Right. But I think there's huge upside here. There's huge upside. It's almost like golf is never, beyond like the fictional stuff that we see in like movies, golf has never really had like an entertainment side, meaningful entertainment side, and this is that.
Yeah. Should be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to February 15th on Netflix. I'll be sure to binge that one, that's for sure. So that'll wrap up our second episode here in 2023. We'll be back next week with another episode of Out of Bounds, hopefully again on Tuesday next week. Be sure to follow us on TikTok and Twitter. And whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, just keep on swinging.
You've been listening to Out of Bounds. If it's coverage, debate, or discussion of pro and local golf, we'll be talking about it. Be sure to visit the website at fingerlakes1.com. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at OutOfBoundsFL1. See you next time on Out of Bounds.